first question, Luke, is that just say a bit about who you are and what were the specific circumstances surrounding your arrest and incarceration. And along with that, when did you become aware that the state was using your case to advance its agenda of social control?
Okay. Well, so I'm Luke O'Donovan, and on New Year's Eve going into 2013, I was at a party with a number of friends and ended up being attacked by a group of men, like 15 of them at the most, at the time when most of them were involved, and defended myself with a knife, stabbed 5 of them, got stabbed myself 3 times, and then escaped, and then was arrested at the hospital and charged with 5 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, which later got changed to 4 counts of aggravated assault and 1 count of attempted murder. And I eventually took a plea deal that included a 10-year sentence to serve 2 in prison that the judge modified at the last minute to include during my 8 years of probation banishment from the state of Georgia. What was the second part of the question?
Specifically, when did you become aware that the state was using your case to advance an agenda of social control? And,
right.
Along with that, like, how did different kinds of social structures like gender or patriarchy or like heterosexism affect the way that, the narrative of your case?
So, regarding that, I was aware from the start that my case, as soon as the state became involved, I knew that any action they took would be in the interest of promoting an agenda of social control, because a social control isn't a tool that the state implements. Rather, the state is an apparatus, a tool used to attain social control. So any time the state is involved, that is the intent, is to advance this agenda of a specific social order. It also happens that in my case, I was structures of heteronormativity played a role. I think outside of the state apparatus, but within a framework of social control, in that the motivation for my attack was based on my perceived sexuality being deviant.
Right.
And then so this was the motivation for the private individuals or whatever acting who assaulted me. And the state was able to see on one side a deviant actor of a violent altercation, on one side a deviant body, and on another side normal bodies, the bodies of citizens on this side, and on the other the body of a criminal. That is to say, though, that if the state had decided to go the other route and to prosecute my attackers instead of prosecuting me, they would have been doing that because they had seen that it would be more beneficial towards their agenda of social control, as you put it, to do so. And we know that in this instance, they deemed that my prosecution and imprisonment was more in that interest than prosecuting neither side or prosecuting my attackers. And so we can draw certain implications from that.
Right. In terms of other than your arrest and incarceration, could you say just briefly for a minute or so, like, what is your experience with and awareness of other forms of state repression, either that you've seen while in prison or other things that you participated in or experienced on the outside?
Well, when we talk about repression, I think it's important to remember that repression is not an end. Repression is a tactic that's employed. It's a means toward a greater end, a productive end. So while there are repressive characteristics of prison, like I'm kept away from my family, I'm what I eat and what I wear, and all this is determined for me. The end goal of this is not to repress what I would be, but to produce something that is more governable, to produce prisoners as separated from citizens, and potentially, depending on how the state decides to act in each instance, sometimes to attempt to rehabilitate the prisoner, to create of the prisoner a citizen again. So with that understanding of repression, we can see kind of every aspect of our lives is, even if it's not direct repression, plays into the same overarching strategy to like produce us as knowable, governable subjects.
So I'm going to ask a couple more questions. These are going to be sort of pretty specific about in terms of oriented towards people who do support work for people who are going through this process of arrest and trial and possible imprisonment. First question here on this kick: what kind of support did you get or are you getting from others related to your arrest and or imprisonment in this case, and also through other stages of that process, for example, time before the trial, sentencing,
right, incarceration.
In addition to that, that's the kind of support that you did get, and examples of that. In your view, how important is it to have that support, and what are people doing well to support folks in your situation, and what can radicals do better to support victims of state repression?
The amount of support I've received has been phenomenal and incredibly important. I guess to lay it out chronologically, when I was first arrested, there was stories run in the media claiming that I had been kicked out of a party, returned with a knife, and gone on a random stabbing rampage. Within 24 hours, the people who would eventually make up my defense committee had changed that media narrative, had been able to put out a more truthful narrative about my defending myself against a homophobic attack, and that was by that time was had become the prominent narrative. It's only because of this that I think I was ever able to be bailed out at all. And then, of course, being bailed out, and I think that's what led my lawyer to seek me out in the first place. My lawyer also ended up charging me a substantial amount of money, but a lot less than you would typically see on a case like this. I ended up paying a little over $10,000, which is a lot, but is not very much when you're facing 110 years in prison. And I think that's because it was such a big case in the media and everything. But that leads into the next step of support that I received, which was fundraising, which began again with the local people who I knew who were supporting me, And then with them reaching out to places all across the country where they knew people and just asking them to throw fundraisers, putting stuff up on the internet, I ended up paying almost nothing of my legal fees. And now being incarcerated and serving 2 years, more fundraising has been going on just all across the country. And perhaps more significantly, definitely at times more important for me, has been the number of letters I've been receiving and the amount of moral support I've been getting in that way, just from total strangers and close friends. So I don't know. I feel like I'm an example where people have done incredibly well, outstandingly well. Even when I was in court, the courtroom was filled. Like, people had to be turned away. So in every way I can imagine, I've been supported.
What, in your opinion, based on your experience, can radicals be doing better in terms of supporting people going through these kinds of repression? And then after that, there's one more question, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. Well, just quickly, in terms of my personal experience, there's not much been missing. Like, I can't think of much else that could have been done, except, of course, the material abolition of the structures that make possible prison and other forms of prison and police and courts. So that's what people maybe should focus on. But also in other cases, I've seen like it's important not to forget for those who are close to the people going through into prison, or not to forget the sort of communal, emotional, metaphysical support people need. And I know that can sometimes be hard, because the people closest to me, for instance, are the ones who are busying themselves trying to, like, make sure I'm provided for materially. But it's just very important that to not neglect the other side of things.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so I got I guess one last question here for you. This one's pretty long, so stick with me and I'll just read it out. So in the wave of protests surrounding the recent killings by cops, like, for example, the Eric Garner case up north, and then also Ferguson, and a number of others, a number of people participated in street demonstrations for the first time and were perhaps a bit overwhelmed by the power of the state, not just in terms of its ability to use force in the streets, but also the lengths that the state would go to stifle and stop dissent and to pacify social movements. In light of all that, what would be your advice to someone who is maybe first starting out with some of these struggles and might be intimidated by the might of the state in that context?
Right. When I might feel intimidated by the power of the state, and the power of the prevailing social order, and how difficult it seems to change it, and what high consequences you face when attempting to change it, or to even simply spit in its eye.
Right.
What I find helpful is to remember how powerless I always feel, how removed from any kind of real life I am when I'm not in prison, and how powerful I feel. How powerful it would feel to be standing on a smashed cop car in the middle of a street that cops can't come down right now. How powerful people felt in Baltimore just yesterday when 4,000 people rioted and only 12 were arrested. and now those 12 are facing serious consequences. But the reason people face consequences in contexts like these is in order to try to stop them from happening. But when we remember, we have very little to lose. What life are we living now?